duties. My son's first day of orientation, high school freshman. But my name is Sam Cast. I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships and Initiatives at the Institute for Nonviolence. I'll pass it to my brother, Tavares.
How you doing? I'm Tavares Harrington, the Austin Outreach Supervisor for INVC. We're just doing introductions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Anyone else?
Hi, everyone. I'm Shonda Collins. I'm the Vice President of Development and Communications for the Institute for Nonviolence.
Please, you gonna tell them?
Right. Okay. I think that's everyone from our team. So we're kind of open to you. I made a promise when we came up to Toledo that we are happy to do a follow-up. I've seen that Mr. Cunningham is on the Zoom and running your efforts, and you're trained by Cities United, so I think you're in very good hands. And you're probably doing some of the best practices around the country. I've seen your reductions in violence. Congratulations, it's hard work. I hope the community is supporting you. So for me, what would be helpful if you guide us a little bit, what could be the most helpful to hear from our team? Sam and Tavares have a tremendous amount of experience. They negotiated a lot of truces. They're working in very, very difficult neighborhoods, and they rose in rank. So what would be the most helpful to you to hear from us?
So I'm coming in, I would say fairly ignorant. This is Malcolm Cunningham at the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. Yeah, we have a number of our team from the Save Our Community program here. They work in a couple of neighborhoods. What we continue to arrive at is we don't have enough, and we also need more programs that can operate in other communities, that can provide a different type of intervention. So really, I'd like to learn more about your model and how you see this work looking in Toledo, if that's something that you all are choosing to pursue. I got my
I'll start with a bit of background and jump in, and then let Sam and Tavares describe more the details of the programmings they deal with, the challenges they deal with. So I started in Boston working for a Black Pentecostal church during the crack epidemic and a real crisis with policing. And I think the first 20 years of those of us working around the country from 1990s to 2010, it was mainly sort of an intervention, street work, outreach, whatever you want to call it, interruption. It was very basic. No one gave us resources really for case management or workforce, or let alone mental health support. So it was a very bare bone kind of field. And the downside is some of our leaders nationally spoke about we can do this very cheaply because there was no resources. So we overpromised, and we had too few resources and too few people. And that's very, very dangerous. Some cities even wanted to replicate what Boston did. We call it, some people call it the Boston miracle. I don't. But still, Boston still leads the country in its reductions. Some cities replicated Boston with basically volunteers. And I said, I'm not interested to help cities who are going to use outreach workers and volunteers. People without bulletproof vests that work in the community most dangerous places should be compensated. They're community assets. People in the past told us you should be happy that you're working because you guys have backgrounds, you made bad choices. Thank God this is not the attitude anymore. Our friends in Live Free USA and other organizing groups have got all the way to the White House. Sam was in the White House graduating from the first Community Violence Intervention Academy. So it's a different day, but we need the support of the community to continue and support your interrupters, your outreach workers. Where are we now? So then we went to Providence, we added victim services. I was recruited 9 years ago to Chicago to build a big partnership. Where are we in Chicago now? And I don't think Toledo can be there. Definitely not the amounts of numbers we get invested, but I think where's the model now, the best practices around the country to do this work? Outreach is still the core of the work, but we have victim services. So every shooting will respond with outreach and victim servicing. We have a robust case management. We have a reentry program. We have 3 different workforce programs. We have 9 people, 3 of them are clinicians, who are only taking care of our staff, right? We have staff that have more trauma than soldiers, and we're sending them every night back to deal with shootings. It's very cruel. It's a cruel job. So to support, luckily in Chicago, and I'm really, really grateful to funders and others, and I'll talk how we have that here. I can't believe it. And someone who's been doing it for 35 years. How we tried to do that before without the resources. People deserve the resources, the support to do that. We build protocols, and I'm sure you have that. We get notified by the police as well as some of the community of shootings, so we respond 24 hours a day. You do need a capacity for that, otherwise you're just draining your people. The Institute works in 3.5 neighborhoods, and we have 120 staff, so that's a beast, right? People on stipend in programs, in workforce programs, all flip, which are ambassadors and hot corners. We have another 200 people. So the Institute kind of manages and supports 300 people. And we're just one partner out of 17 that cover 28 out of the 77 neighborhoods of Chicago, right? Now, the neighborhood I'm in at the moment, Austin, is 100,000 people. It's the most violent neighborhood in the city. It's more violent than many cities in America. We have 52 rival crews that Sam and Tavares could speak about how they mediated between all of them non-aggression agreements. That is unbelievable work. Risky, dangerous, takes a lot of skill on the ground to do that. But what I would say to try and help Mr. Cunningham, 20 years, 25 years of my career, always I heard, this is amazing work, but sorry, we don't have too much money for you, right? What we're building now in Chicago is a civilian power, is a civilian infrastructure, right? You can't do that without resources. Nothing in America we do without resources. Not the military, not hospitals, not schools, not businesses. All those really smart people making a lot of profits for the shareholders. None of them are doing brilliant things for free or without resources. So changing violence and 400 years of trauma and disinvestment is going to take money and effort. Ultimately, where we are in Chicago now, we have 50 funders, private funders that we convinced 9 years ago, 8 years ago to get involved, that it's in their self-interest. 2 years ago, the business community got involved. Before it was, well, it doesn't happen in our neighborhood, it doesn't happen downtown. Now they realize Chicago could be 3 times as wealthy as it is. Same goes for Toledo. If you have violence, women don't exercise in the park, they get diabetes early. You have to pay for health, all of that, and businesses don't come, restaurants don't open. People don't want to live there. So violence, the way we look at it, we looked at LA and New York, violence went down, population went up. Detroit for a long time, when violence went up, population went down. They're now addressing it, I think, successfully in Detroit. So this is an investment that everyone should care about, not just black and brown neighborhood, it's on all of us. And that's really is the plan. Now we are facing, I'm sure some of your funding and some of our funding came from the COVID money from the White House. We call it the ARPA funds, and that's phasing out. So the main battle now of all our partners in Chicago is at the State House, and not just Chicago, the whole of Illinois. is to make sure that all of it moves to the general operating fund of the state, that we keep supporting that. And that's for really outreach by ourselves. If we don't have organizers and faith-based leaders who push for it, sometimes organizers are very focused on police reform and what's not working. We gotta support the brothers and sisters who are doing the work. That is the healthy alternative where the community saves itself. And ultimately, if we fail to get them resources, we failed. I'm a middle class guy. I have a master's degree. I can go for fancy programs. My number one job is to provide stability to the working class people who came in from the life they lived in. That is our first responsibility before we do anything fancy, is to make sure that one thing I'm the most proud of in Chicago is that for 9 years, no outreach worker was laid off. That is the first time in the history of Chicago. And I'll close with that. What's the size of Chicago's violence intervention community now? Between outreach, victim services, case management, wellness initiatives, clinicians, and between those on stipend in workforce programs or street ambassadors, there's now almost 2,000 people with backgrounds that are being supported. 2,000. It's much bigger than New York and LA combined, right? Now, we need the police to do their reform, their $2 billion system. They need to function better. And we have a particular problem of guns since we're surrounded by Indiana and Ohio and Wisconsin that is unique, that is different than East Coast or West Coast. But the civilian infrastructure we're building is a beast, and it's really bigger than violence reduction. It's as Senator Peters from Chicago says, he's a state senator, that CBI is to Black and brown people what police and fire was to the Irish and the Italian immigrants. It's a workforce problem. Finally, 20 staff of the Institute are now enrolled in a BA granting college program here at the Institute. 3 of them just graduated. We gotta invest in bringing people into a life that they can make a real living and not stop there. I hope that, and Sam, Tavares, if you wanna end.
If I'd add anything to that, I'm gonna mess that up. But I can say I am one of the staff that is in the College on Brown program and finishing up my bachelor's degree. And I think that's important because one of the things that, and I'll just add that too often I know we're focused on our participants and making sure they're good, making sure the community is safer, community members feel safer, but also at the Institute, the highlight of everything is our staff. If you're not pointing to them, but yet we're expecting them to give us maybe 75%, then we're failing as leaders to give them all the tools that they
need. I think y'all made it pretty hard for me. Y'all covered all bases. I mean, but on the aspect of what we're dealing with here in Austin, as Teny has said, we're dealing with 52 different splintered groups. It makes it very difficult. We've been able to establish peace agreements and non-aggression agreements in a few of the very hot spots that was taking a lot of lives, which was this was I mean, it was very much needed, but it's wonderful how it's working out. I mean, in that group, I mean, we don't get into talking about names and anything because everything is anonymous and everything, you know, for everyone. But those groups, I've seen a dramatic change in those areas. I mean, we were losing people every day in those areas where we didn't have these agreements. And now that we have these agreements in place, I mean, we don't have any activity over in that area like that, you know, and we're tired, you know, as he said, also we are building this civilian architecture, and the civilian architecture is people that have LTO in the community. These people are people that mostly have been born and raised in the community, so they know everyone, and they're respected. So that all helps out. These are things that you're going to need in your program as well. People that's from the community that could really go out there and talk to those guys and really touch them, that have relationships. It's all about building relationships, and that's pretty much it.
Tavares, you mentioned LTO. Can you say what LTO is? Is that long term, like they've been there for a long time or something?
No, that is considered a license to operate. That's the term that we have coined here in Chicago. Far as when we say license to operate, that was be with someone that like grew up on the block in the community, that knows all the key players, that could possibly get out there and talk to those guys and build a relationship with them. You know, a lot of people be kind of reserved on just talking to anyone. You know, when you have people that have relationships in the community and they can sit down and talk to them where they feel comfortable, you know, it changes things, you know.
That makes
Another
sense.
term we use is credible messenger in that same regard.
Yeah.
There's one thing that I also wanted to highlight, just as somebody who I actually lived in Toledo for about 6 years. For those of you who don't know me, I was there from 2014 to 2020, and that's how we made the connection. I was connected with Crystal and Josie as well. So good to see you all, and good to be talking to folks that are trying to figure out the complex issues that Toledo has. One thing that I remember from being there is similar to what Tavares and Teny have mentioned about the 52 groups and the splintering. I compare that to the fact that Toledo has a lot of social services, and I think it may be the most social services or the most nonprofits per capita for the state of Ohio, if that's still correct. But to that point about the splintering, the, you know, offshoots of different things, and how complicated I know it can probably be to gain the coordination, or some of those peace treaties, as you will, or the license to operate in certain spaces, because there's a lot of overlap, there's a lot of duplication, and there's a lot of fighting for territory in that regard. So I think that's definitely something to keep in mind as you all are looking to target certain areas and involve certain people, and make sure that there is that coordination, you know, on the east side or on the north end, or whatever the case may be, and that you all are building relationships with those that have the credibility in that space, but then also, again, mindful of those who are maybe creating that struggle with the additional duplication. So I just wanted to put that out there based on what I remember.
Yeah, I mean, I think much of what you said is still accurate. More nonprofits per capita than anywhere else, and there are issues with coordination. The challenge that I run into, and that I think the team would probably also say, is the resources for those that are doing this work directly. In some ways, there's more willingness to support systems as opposed to these sorts of efforts. We've had to explain what credible messengers are, what violence interruption is, since 2021 when it first started. And it still feels like there isn't complete clarity from community. I don't know if that's because of the way that the media messages about it or what, but it does feel like that's a recurring challenge for us, is like the messaging, and honestly getting these organizations that typically get funding to put these resources towards this sort of work, because we know it's effective when it's supported, when it's staffed. And, you know, I can't even backfill my team, just to be frank, because of where we're situated, because of some of the challenges that, I mean, just to be frank, I can't backfill the team. And it means that we aren't as effective in the work that we do. And it means that we can't support these grassroots efforts that, you know, are operating with the, I guess, the LTO or however we want to call it within our community. So that's really where my struggle is right now. I wonder how we frame and have that conversation with the business community, with the funders, with those sorts of partners, because I want us to have a rich collection of models of people that are doing this work. But, you know, I've got 14 staff on my team. 7 of them are in schools, 4 of them are in community, and then we have probably 5 other people that are operating and doing this type of work in community, right? And that just doesn't meet the scale of the problem. And I don't think it ever will if it's going to maintain this size. So where I'm struggling is like, how do we grow it? How do we build the support to put these on general operation funds, put these on, you know, those sorts of things? Because like you said, ARPA is coming to a close. We've got end of 2015 to spend down the rest of our ARPA money, but we've been spreading $2.9 million over, you know, the last 4 years, making it work. And it's been effective when we have the resources and the support. But when we don't, when we can't backfill, when we can't bring in additional dollars, then it just makes it this challenge. So yeah, that's, I mean, I'd probably already shared too much, and with this being a recording, I'm sure it's not all that great for me to speak so plainly, but that's the nature of our challenge right now, just to be frank. And maybe you should come back to Toledo and help us out with some of this stuff.
I mean, I'm glad you're speaking that directly. That is, you know, for too many years, I was too polite and, you know, kind of we had to handle what was given to us. We are now thinking, and we wanted for many years to think differently, which is the right dosage, right? In medicine, you don't just say, I'm going to give you 2 doctors. The question is, what's the coverage area? If we're building a cancer center, 2 doctors are not going to cut it for 300,000 people, right? In the military, the same thing. In many fields, in classrooms. Our field was just always, people told us, what's your model? Is it this model or that model? It's really less important. It's important to attract good leaders. It's important to do good trainings, and it's important to have the right dosage of the treatment, which is the amount of staff. So that is something to be dialogue with the coalition here to support you. This is something a call to arms. It's not like we're just selfish and say, just care about community violence intervention. We're not. But a lot of nonprofits, a lot of efforts in the past have talked about violence. So at-risk people, which is really important work, it's prevention. It was not dealing with the 3%, the 2%, the 0.5% driving violence in the city, right? They were always last to get in line to programs, the first one to be dropped out. So we got to sort that out. Another piece of advice, again, why we move as a coalition, I'm a pretty good spokesman for the movement, and the institute would have been closed down by now, I can tell you that, without allies, without supporters. We use consulting firms. I don't know if you have them in Toledo, but I'm sure the university, to really map what is the need versus what are the resources. So the institute is really one of the beasts in Chicago. We work with maybe 300 people in Austin. When we mapped it, between arrests and people who were shot, we mapped it with Northwestern University, with Andy Papachristos, with the Crime Lab, with University of Chicago, with BCG, the Boston Consulting Group. The number that needs to be served just in Austin in one neighborhood is 2,200. Well, that's pretty easy case now. We serve the institute, which has a great reputation, amazing people. We only serve 15%. So that puts a realistic picture how much, and we managed to bring the violence down from 16 by 50%. But that's the case that got the business community, the funders, even to scale us up. We just started a new experiment. It's not done anywhere else, not just us. I mean, this is the funders in Chicago, so it's not the institute. But we got selected to be the first implementers, which is called SC2, scaling up to the right dosage. So we have 5 years to get to 75% of the 2,200 people, right? And for that, we had to bring other partners in. We're in one neighborhood, we now have 10 partners that we're helping them get to our level of outreach and victim services. We have employment and education partners. So that's a chance to include practitioners that don't work with that population and have more voices supporting the work and educating. But Mr. Cunningham, I would say to you, I sometimes get amazed how few people understand that there is a plan in Chicago, who live in Chicago, both the community and in wealthy neighborhoods. They look at Citizens Act. If they live by the lake in a wealthy neighborhood in a $3 million condo, they think they live in Beirut, right? So you will have to continue to educate. As much as we have, we put editorials, we're on TV, there's 2,000 of us, we're connected to 50 funders, the most important funders in Chicago. The governor speaks about us, the mayor. So many people are still operating from fear, from ignorance. The census, immediately they reflect and understand that. When you're fearful, you want more police. And that goes both for people in the community here and both people in wealthy neighborhoods. So that work is really, really hard in a media market that is so splintered. Like definitely Fox News and some police Twitter accounts do not help us. So we got to reach all those audiences. We do synagogues, churches, mosques, but we got to keep doing it. I assume the same is for Toledo. And we can talk. Shanda is the guru on messaging and telling the story differently. So we're so excited. Sorry if we stole her from you. We didn't mean to. But you do have some talent. We want it back here in Chicago. She's from Chicago. So yeah, we're still struggling with that, but I think in coalition, especially if you work for City Hall, make sure you have civilians and you have foundations and others selling your message as well, and spend time on reporters, even if sometimes they do a negative thing. Constantly have to educate the media. They're so used to just telling the sexy, violent stories, prevention. You need 9 stories of prevention to 1 bad story, and that's hard. It looks like what's new. All right, so you got outreach workers, great. Find new angle, participants who are succeeding. You're not self-promoting. It is, and I would like the community groups. It's not just City Hall, because City Hall obviously has its own interests, but try and highlight community group and individuals doing the work. Hopefully that was a little bit enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Teny, I have a question. This is Crystal. When you talk about those funders, are there national funders? Are there particular areas where, and I know Malcolm probably does not have capacity to write, but like I'm part of a national organization, a local chapter in Toledo, and we write grants constantly for the programs we do, and we would definitely be interested in doing something because our focus is children and then business owners, right? And so are there any particular funders that we should maybe look at, or that the city can even be looking at outside of those ARPA dollars, which are great, but if you don't have the right lobbying XYZ, it's just never coming to you, right? So are there private things, anything like that we should be looking for?
You should look at the PSPC. Shanda, do you remember what the acronym is from? The Partnership for Safe and Peaceful Community. PSPC website. We can connect you with the people who run it, but that's the 50 foundations. I think the Joyce Foundation is a regional foundation that you could probably get money from. MacArthur is national. So there's definitely groups there. You know, it is a bit easier in Chicago, but again, for many years, we didn't succeed in Chicago getting that funded. And there were two $50 million attempts before that failed. So funders were really not very hot on getting involved. It took a lot of work to get them involved, but whatever the businesses, the big businesses, the banks you have in Toledo, you gotta create a round table for them. We're glad, not just us, we'll bring some of our bigger partners to do maybe a round table with them. But you gotta bring the leaders, again, the business leaders also into Toledo, because they have connections beyond. There's some foundations that are national. We can try and send you some of those names that are funding the work. But you work with Cities United. Cities United is very connected around the country. It's a good group that has a lot of connections. So they're even more connected to national funders than we are.
Thanks. I will definitely start looking into those things. It sounds like when you guys talk about creating that, the credible messenger and being in relationship with the communities, that a lot of this work is like, you say outreach, but I mean literally out of the office, knocking on doors, creating meetings and systems. But when you get those meetings and systems, what is the process to like, I would say you need to set up the training program first, so that when you go to the meeting, you can tell these groups what you need and what does that look like? Is there a national model, or, you know, I mean, we have the violence interrupters, but like how you marry workforce development, now you have the higher education pieces in there. And typically in Toledo, those are all segmented. So we have a bunch of silos and none of those places are working together, because a lot of people make money off of people's pain. And so fixing people's pain in Toledo is not really a big focus. And our minority population is 1 in 5 African American, even smaller in the Latino community. So we have a lot of majority, small minority pockets. They don't work well together. And so when we go to create systems, we can have a small impact, but it's very difficult to get many of the leaders to do little more than give you just enough money and then say, well, we gave you $2 million. That should have been enough to fix this major problem that y'all have in y'all community. How do we, you know, what's something we could do for that? Or I don't know.
So I heard a national expert that I worked with for the last 30 years say to a friend of mine, the work is amazing that he does around the country, but he hates the politics. And he wishes the politics wasn't so difficult. My answer to that is, the work is the politics. All right? You can't do this work without having the patience and tenacity to keep knocking and convincing people, right? We're judgmental people who are involved in violence. We don't judge ourselves for how we caused it. And so building the relationships is the work of the coalition, helping Mr. Cunningham. That's what you're all going to do together all the time, one banker at a time, get a coalition of funders. And that means you have other bosses. I have a lot of bosses. Funders are my bosses, elected officials are my bosses. Everyone has a brilliant idea when it comes to the field of violence reduction. And as a professional who's been doing it for 35 years successfully, I have to humbly listen. Even though it drives me crazy sometimes, because they don't know much. But that's the price to pay when you want people getting involved and staying interested. And I see that Shanda wants to chime in.
Yep, go ahead, Shanda.
Sure. You know, I tend to believe that data is really your currency in a sense. So I would encourage you all to, you know, if there's anything we can send you in that regard to show that this really does work because of the coordinated effort of all those pieces. I think you bring up a great point, Crystal, that yes, outreach might be the pipeline, but, you know, in terms of actually seeing the outcomes, it's really because all of those other pieces come together really well. So the victim services, the workforce, the behavioral health and trauma support, and then the case management for the long-term care. So it is extremely important to see that, you know, when you look at our data, that it works because all of these components are working together. And then again, like I said, looking at that as a best practice practice, and then other entities that are doing similar things, which I don't know if anyone's quite doing it in the way that we do in terms of having all those services in-house. But again, there's opportunity to then, like you said, try to bridge those gaps with the organizations that may have strength or focus, specialization in those particular areas, to then showcase that, you know, it works when you have all of those things as a coordinated effort. And then I'll also say that's from an actual service delivery perspective. And then also in terms of the logistics and the advocacy, we're coordinated on that as well. So whenever we do trips to Springfield, we are in communication with the other groups that are doing similar things, or our partners, so that we are all coordinated on our messaging to elected officials as well as to the media. I'm on a call every single week with other communications leaders at the other CVI or community violence intervention agencies, our data partners, and folks that are over the communication piece for all of these organizations. We meet weekly. So I think that's also a big part of you know, why it works. It really is a coordinated effort.
Okay, thank you. We have a lot of other people that are on the call that can be allies in this work. Is there any of our folks who haven't had an opportunity to talk that have some things they'd like to ask or share?
How do I raise my hand? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Let me see who that is that's talking. Say your name so I can see you.
This is Tavares Harrington.
Okay, go ahead, Tavares. Yeah.
I was just gonna add about pretty much convincing the community, like how this would work. Some of the things that we are doing in Austin, we're pretty much getting out and educating the community about community violence intervention and nonviolence trainings and CBI and some of these things that we're doing over at INVC. We do some of these things at our Lights in the Night. In Austin, we're doing it currently now in Thursday and Friday. I'm sorry. But that is where we come out in the community and engage with the community. We bring food, face painting, music, games. So we're engaging with the community, talking to the community, and pretty much letting them know about the work that we're doing. Also, we do canvassing where we go in the community in hot spots, maybe, or target areas, and we talk to like key individuals about, you know, the work that we're doing. And maybe sometimes you get inroads like that. You know, when you get out and you canvas, a lot of them be foreign, you know, some of the work that we're doing is foreign to them and they don't know what's going on. So when you get out and you engage with the community and talk to them and pretty much educate them on what we're doing, it pretty much works out for you.
Thanks. In the chat, Malcolm put in the copy of a link to the comprehensive plan that the city of Toledo put together. So I don't know if you guys can see that in there. That might be something you can see right away where some holes are, or give us some insider things on that. We'd appreciate that. Anybody else have any comments, concerns, want to make a point here on this call?
If I may, I'm from Toledo. I do a lot of, I guess, intervention work, but on the street level. And I be in so many of these groups and these meetings. And one thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is to reach the trenches, you got to go in the trenches. To reach the killers, you got to know the killers. To try to stop them from killing, you got to know who's killing. And that's the hardest part with doing the real work is reaching those people. You know, people who want to, you know, stop violence and all of that and want to get out the gang and stuff, yeah, they can be reached by anybody. But the ones who really doing the real damage to our kids, they're not coming to meetings. They're not going to school. They're not just ready, accessible like that. And it takes a certain type of individual or certain people, how y'all stated before, I can't remember the term y'all used, but people like that to reach those people. And I think at some point, every city has to be able to reach those people and get those people to try to stop, because it's like a cycle effect. Say my brother is gang related and he's doing whatever he's doing and his life is taken. That may make me take a turn for the worse, one revenge for my brother, or so on and so forth. You know what I mean? It's like a never ending cycle. And at some point, we got to reach those who really, really doing the damage. I had a situation in my neighborhood where one street was about to go to war with another street just a few weeks ago, and I couldn't get those dudes to come together. So what I did was I just popped up on one of them and called the other one on FaceTime, and I talked to both of them, and I got them to understand, you know, the losses that everybody going to take on both sides, and how it's not a good thing, especially when we're from the same neighborhood. I know where your mother live at, you know where my mother live at, and so on and so forth. Like, it's going to cause a lot of damage. And I got them to see that it just ain't a good thing. And they, you know, um, squash the beef or whatever. But how do you record data for that? How do you make that known to the public? You really can't. You know, those people who really gonna really do the real work are never gonna be recognized. They're never gonna get paid. They're never gonna have any type of anything, more than likely, with these systems that everyone wants to put in place. And that's the real nature of it, for real. Like, that's just what it is. Like, I've seen things that information I've given to city officials on a chalkboard in the mayor's office. But never once did I get a check, but people getting a check for reciting that same information that I gave to the public. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, at some point, everybody got to trust everybody, and it got to be a multifaceted approach, and it got to come from every angle. And you're going to have to trust people who are in the streets and who have connections to the streets to really make a real impact.
Hey,
So
if I may,
can I just say something quickly? Devon just saved $2 million to the city of Toledo.
Yeah.
Just for this story, right? He is a bigger donor than the bankers are at the moment, right? This is a $2 million homicide. It could have gone worse than that, right? That is the work, right? This is think about now, and not to mention, when we talk to our young people, every funeral to the family costs what could have been a black or brown owned house down payment. 10 to 15,000, it would you could have turned into black ownership and brown ownership, right? This is real. Well, what he just described about him being able to fall the two sides, right? We congratulate people on all kind of deals. He just saved the city of Toledo $2 million. That's what it was worth. His knowledge.
Okay.
if I may interject and add on to what Mr. Fagan was saying, I emphatically concur with what he is saying. And what the point that he was trying to make was about the license to operate. That's what he had forgot. And I think that is very undervalued here, because he's absolutely correct. In these Toledo streets, they're not, if they don't know you, they don't know your family, they don't know anything that you have done in these streets, they're going to look at you like the police when you come to talk to them. They're going to think the thing is, you know, in most of these neighborhoods, they think you're trying to get over or set them up. And I heard the other brother speaking today about pouring more into those type of workers. And this is true because somebody like such as himself or myself, I'm from the LaGrange corridor. I'm an interrupter, Save Our Community initiative, and there's very minimal of us with license to operate. Let's start there. So you can't just throw whoever out there to talk to these people and squash these beefs. Even before I came into this work, what the brother was just saying, that's what we do, just in the neighborhoods. I've seen him on my side of town. I've been on this side of town. We have universal connections to do these things. And I think, again, as Malcolm was speaking, we need more resources to pour in to those with license to operate. There needs to be more training, just in case some people might have missed that learning curve with, let's say, knowing how to code switch, knowing how to talk to somebody in the arena that's higher up, and knowing how to talk to somebody in these streets. There needs to be a universal code switch, and maybe that's how some people who are in the higher ups may be able to obtain the license to operate. But that is paramount to doing this work, and plus being poured into as somebody who is in the trenches, because there's a burnout.
Yeah.
And people are taking chances with their lives, just going to try to mediate and facilitate some of these situations.
Thanks for sharing. Anyone else have comments? Joe, I see you turned your mic on.
I did that because I wanted to ask Tavares if when he says Austin, he's talking about Austin, Texas.
No, this is Austin, Chicago, Illinois.
Okay. All right. I
Yeah.
just wasn't sure because I got family down in Austin, Texas. I
Yeah.
wanted to know if you were working down there.
Yeah, this is a community in Chicago, on the west side of Chicago.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. And yeah, to piggyback off what you guys were saying about that license to operate, yeah, you definitely need that. That is a part of our civilian architecture that we're building here in Chicago. The guys that we're getting are key individuals from these areas. I mean, they know how to go in and talk to these people. They have relationships. They can go in and sit down with, I'm talking about the guys that you're talking about, the ones that's rough. But see, that's the thing. When you turn around and you're trying to create a system up there, those are the guys that you want to recruit. You want to start trying to recruit those key individuals like that, the ones that you can work with, that has, a sensible head. Here in Chicago, we have the MPA where we go to 18 weeks of training, and they teach us about nonviolence training, CBI, all these different tactics that we can use in the field. But that's a whole nother thing. But, these are the things that you're going to need in building that.
Thanks, Tavares. What is the MPA?
The MPA is a Metropolitan Peace Academy where they have a cohort of classes for outreach, where they professionalize the field. Mm-hmm. You go through 18 weeks of class, and it's just all about outreach.
Okay, thanks. Malcolm, is that something, I'm just asking some questions here, is that something that you could get professional development dollars for? Or maybe, how the Greater Toledo Community Foundation has the capacity building grants that, boost the organization. Is that something that can be tried, or do you have to, I know you at the city, so that's a whole grant process over there, but.
We actually, we applied for funding that we're hoping to hear back about, and the funding is to stand up. It's not called MPA. We actually don't know what it would be called, but to stand up an academy where more folks can get trained. And we've been able to do some small pieces. We got a number of folks. Devon was in on that training along with our staff,
Right.
Program Inc., a couple of other Go Time Grind, and something called Rewire CBT. So we got them trained up in that. We work with No More Red Dots out of Louisville on a couple of things, but we want to make it into something that is a system like what you're saying. Like we need a training academy in Toledo where people could be, where those people with the license to operate can be trained in best practices by people that have been doing the work, specifically from our community. So that's something that we're looking for. We're just trying to figure out the right way to fund it, and we're hoping that we get the dollars to fund it.
Okay.
And honestly, I mean, if you have a curriculum, I would love to get my eyes on that just to even see what it looks like. But yeah, absolutely. We need
All
it.
right, great. Thank you. Shonda and then Troy. So Shonda, you had your hand up first.
Sure, and I'm sure we can see about getting the curriculum. I know I also have the curriculum for the CVI Leadership Academy. So that the University of Chicago, they host a Community Violence Intervention Leadership Academy. The cohort has folks in it from around the country. There's Chicago, Houston, LA, and so it's an opportunity to share best practices and continue again professionalize in the field. They're often in DC and other spaces. So I do have access to that curriculum and happy to share it. The other thing is that I was going to say, just in regards to something that I found that's unique with what we're doing here in Chicago, but probably even more so with our organization, is the tenure. And so, nonprofit is usually very transient for multiple reasons. And, cost of living and income is part of that. And not to say we haven't recognized that as a challenge that we're continually trying to address. But I think what also is again unique to what we're seeing is folks are committed to the work. And I think that's why part of the reason why we were chosen to for the 5-year project of the scaling, because in 5 years, it's very likely that we'll still have the same people committed to the work, which works really well for the data. So just keeping that in mind too, in terms of ways that you can be creative about those resources. We have the education program, the bachelor's program. The same trauma support and behavioral health care that we give to our participants is also available to our staff. We have a dedicated staff support specialist, a peer support specialist on staff. So those are other ways that I feel like from a cultural, operating perspective internally, that those are things that have happened to sustain our tenure at the agency. And it looks like Sam has a hand up too, probably going to say the same thing.
We'll go with Troy, and then Sam will come back around to you. Hold on, Troy. Hold on.
I'm sorry, let me put my hand up.
Nope, you're okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to be a part of this. My name is Troy Brown from Owens Community College, and I wanted to make sure that our Toledo constituency represented on this call understand that the work that I'm doing in the community is specifically for providing opportunities for everyone, Black, white, yellow, green, polka dot, striped. I'm the Locust County recruiter for non-traditional students. And in my experiences in the community, doing the work every day, 5 days a week, sometimes 6, I'm recognizing in Toledo specifically, in the metropolitan area, that it's really opportunity that we're lacking for a lot of individuals. They don't have access to the trades. They don't have access to or even have a guiding hand to GED programming. And my job is to make sure that everyone has access and everyone has the opportunity. In fact, I tell our marketing team all the time that Owens actually stands for opportunity. No one's listened so far, but one day if I continue to preach it, shout it from the rooftop, someone's going to listen. But I want to say thank you. But if you ever need me to come out, let me know to talk to individuals. In fact, one of your brothers, Brother Bryson, he's at one of the local high schools. he connected with me to help another student at that particular high school gain access to the GED program because he has aged out. And so I'm willing to come out and meet with individuals one-on-one, no matter how old they are, no matter how young they are. So I want to make sure that everyone on here who's in the Toledo metropolitan area understand the work that I'm doing. So I'm willing to assist and to help connect. So let me be the plug. Thank you for his time.
Thanks, Troy. Can you guys put your contact information in the chat so everybody can connect? That way, if you guys even share individual message with each other. Thanks so much, Troy. Sam?
Yeah, good afternoon. I just have to share, right? The field has evolved. In the ceasefire, cure violence days, the license to operate from the hood who has status in the mob, whatever that was. But it evolved because now.
Uh-oh. Sam? Can you guys hear Sam?
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Sam.
Okay. So I'm saying that the work has evolved because the person no longer has to carry the being a case manager, victim services, reentry, do all that for them in the places where they have that. But also, a license to operate to me is a person who cares and leads with love. And when I hear the brother frustrated, right, how do we highlight that 0.3 population? So it's a combination because us brothers, some of the people who have lived experience, I have it, state, federal conviction, all that stuff. What happens is we create a culture and then we create our own boundaries to get out of that. And it's rough. And I understand the trauma we've been through. But also how you highlight is, so we have some Latinx groups in one of our communities that we serve that they've been fighting for the last 30 years. And we created non-aggression agreements with these guys where they never seen each other. They'll talk back and forth on Snap. But it took us to go in there and build relationships with them. And sometimes it came, unfortunately, when one of their guys got killed and we helped the family out through the victim compensation form. So as soon as that window of opportunity comes, you take it. And my experience, because I've been all over the country, killers are the same everywhere. And I've never met a killer that doesn't accept love. At some point, killers want to be loved. And there's going to be a soft point. And I figure out how to connect with them, right? It is a hard battle. How do you note that? When our violence drop down, so for example, there's a community event that happens on the south side of Chicago in the Latinx community for the last 30 years. Last year at the festival, they had 30 assaults. Of course, they had 40 security guards, 40 CPD. We had one outreach worker. They blamed us. What did we do? I said, okay, we have a very over-opinionated alderman in the area. So I was like, let me take control of this. We're going to figure it out. So I sat down with my partners. We created something to make sure that security was right. So I have to accept this ownership on behalf of everyone in the collaboration. Out of the 3 days, we had one fight. So when I seen the alderman, he's like, Sam, I gotta thank you. I'm like, we're gonna go to the hood so you could thank them brothers that you be bashing. When the captain from the district calls you and like, Sam, this has never happened. Them little brothers feel good that for them not acting their normal way, that society kind of like acknowledge that they could have done that, right? And it's the relentless engagement piece. And I say to you, brothers and sisters doing the work, it becomes discouraging. I was part of the CVILA class, and I must say that we struggle across the country to get our brothers through professionalism. I get it from our trauma, being shot, prison, system messed up, but if we don't continue to fight and find ways to celebrate our wins, there is no giving up for these little brothers. We don't have a white flag for them.
Thank you. All right, guys, we have had a great conversation here today. Teny, I want to ask you, as I said, we have some individuals here, and the Multi-Faith Council hosted this, right? Because we had you come. But is there work that you can say that people who are not Black and brown, who don't live in this community, give the council and those of them that are here some activities or things that they can do? Oh, I know for a fact it's a very difficult thing to say I'm going to engage in that community where I don't belong, and it is a very scary place. But what is the work that can be done other than having meetings, or, you know what I mean? Yes, we were able to convene this conversation, and that's one area, but is there something more purposeful? Is there something else that can be done?
I mean, I'm not from this community, right? I come from Israel. It's its own controversial place, and I know what it means to be abandoned. In the Holocaust, we were abandoned in Europe, right? So the question to all of us in Toledo, if it doesn't affect you that Black and brown people mainly are getting shot, if you don't think it affects your city, then yeah, continue and do what you do. If you do think it affects you, we need your allyship. We need your power build. This is a power building exercise, right? This is to start balancing who is being hurt. So the interrupters that are in Toledo are being supported. You can hear their pain, and Sam talked about that. The worst thing to do is to fight for your brothers and sisters, which they're not going to stop doing, and not being supported for it. Right? And it cannot be just a nice award at some ceremony once a year. Support is building the work, changing the status quo. And that takes courage. And I'm kind of, I was at the DNC hearing, I was at the United Center hearing Michelle and Barack Obama this week. You don't need to wait for an invitation to get involved. The good news is when we get involved, we change violence in the cities, and the income goes up for everyone. Everyone wins. There's no losing. No one loses from changing the level of violence and reducing them. It's a win for everyone. And American cities are fighting in many ways for downtown office space, for restaurant, for rent. Toledo is not a big city. Even Chicago is losing big corporations. They're going to be around Washington, D.C. or New York. Toledo, probably you have even a tougher time. So the solution, for a businessman, say, I'm really focused on that business community. You guys deal with the violence. They're really related. The reputation of Toledo. Every time a parent decides not to send a kid to college in Toledo, that's a $400,000 loss for the city of Toledo. And then the other question I have for you, an academy might be cheaper. What are some cities that are within an hour or two around Toledo? You build an academy together. That's where the state gets involved, right? What's the word? You as organizers should support, go with the interrupters, go with Mr. Cunningham to your capital, go to the State House, build relationship with them so they know about the work, and that you support them as community members, that their work is really important, right? So we're not just hearing polite words from our legislators, they're getting pushed. So faith-based, we rely here on Live Free Illinois. It's an organizing group. Another organizing group, they're tough. They will let the legislators hear it if they want to reject us, right? They don't mess around. So that's another thing. It's a combination of organizers as well as practitioners. And I see Shana just put a note.
Yes. Oh, please do. Thanks, Shonda. Okay, as we get ready to wrap up here, any other final words, final comments? Thank you, Teny. I'll say that. Thank you so much.
One more thing on power building. And again, I'm borrowing now from Barack Obama and from Clinton, but definitely Barack. You don't have to agree 100% with that. Don't write off bankers, business people, Republicans. everyone benefits from that. Everyone should be invited into the cause, right? The cause is a good one, right? We stay away from two things. I support gun control groups, but that this is not our drive. So this is about saving lives in the neighborhood. That whether you do gun control or not, they're affected for many, many reasons. And the other thing, we don't talk about defund the police.
Yeah.
Just like you don't build a hospital by defunding the police. We want to be respected as community workers who are doing community work. People should fund money to fund what we do, just like they fund a hospital and a school. Nothing to do with law enforcement. I don't want to get caught. Our team has serious background. They're alone at 2 in.the morning around the yellow tape with police officers. I don't want our team to be seen as the enemy of law enforcement. We're not. Society can sort out what they invest in the police separately than what they invest in us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Last comments, last opportunity. Those of you that are here participating, any final thoughts? Okay. Well, I will bring us all back together and say thank you so much for joining in on this conversation. Shonda, always a pleasure. I'm so happy to continue working with you, Teny. You're right. You got her from Toledo. I would say it was a good fit there, because who wants to be frustrated trying to get some work done around here? But those of us that are lifers in Toledo, we let me see. I'm gonna put you back up here, Teny. Hold on. I want to put you back up here so you can so we can see that. Ooh, what does this say? Vote 100%. That's right. You want to make the biggest difference. Make sure you participate. Make sure you participate on that first Tuesday in November. That is a huge deal. And we have some major programs going around about voter education. If you check with Reinvest Toledo, they do have a voter education arts drive. It's like they're going to do a power tour in 3 different communities here. So violence interrupters. I know, Malcolm, you probably know something about Amelia's piece. So please show up to those things. That would be a great space. And they are right in those areas. Multi-Faith Council, we will make sure you all are there. DIPTY is also working with Reinvest Toledo there. So we'll make sure that comes out through the Multi-Faith Council as well, so that we can all join together. Joe, I see your hand there too. Thanks so much, everybody, for participating. Joe, let me bring you to the front. There you go.
I just wanted to say that there was a news article I read recently. There was about 155,000 people across the state of Ohio that Frank LaRose has dropped from the voter registration list because they've not participated in 4 years. So they're stale. So make sure you check. If you think you're registered but haven't checked, you may not be able to get to vote when you go to vote. So make sure your registration is active. And if you haven't registered, get registered before October 5th, I think.
Yep. DIPTY can verify that too. Yep, DIPTY, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you attend one of the Reinvest Toledo's voter engagement programs, we will have League of Women Voters will have a table set up, and they will be able to check your voter registration status, and we will be able to register you. But the time is running out, so please, please, check your voter registration information. And if for some reason you have a problem, please contact League of Women Voters chapter in Lucas County, and we'll help you with finding out whether you are registered to vote or not. Please pass that information along to anybody you think that needs it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Teny. Thank you, everybody here. It was wonderful to learn something that I don't know a lot about.
Absolutely. Again, we say thank you, Teny. Thank you, Shonda. Thank you, Tavares. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Malcolm, and bringing your team on. Thank you, Multi-Faith Council, Debbie, who's here, Diane. We have a lot of our board members here from the Multi-Faith Council. Troy, thank you from Owens Community College. We have work to do, and we have some partnerships and relationships with these individuals who are already doing the work. Please, please, please share your information. Read the things that are going on in Chicago. I'm sure as they were willing to come and help out and talk today, we have some opportunity to continue that work. We will, myself, not just tied with the Multi-Faith Council, plan to do some additional work in this area with the multiple organizations that I have on my client roster and those that I'm a member of, because it is important to me. These are my people in my community, and I want to make a difference. And so I'm asking the people of the Multi-Faith Council to join us along. They were willing to bring Teny in for the annual banquet and this follow-up. And so we're going to see what we can do to continue in that space, but definitely appreciate all of us getting together today and spending lunchtime. Have an excellent weekend. It's going to be a hot one this weekend. Thank you, everybody, for participating so much. It was a great conversation. Keep up the great work. And if there's at any time anything I can do to assist you, please, I will send out my contact information and our information through the Multi-Faith Council when we send the follow-up link with this video, and you can share that with as many people as you would like. Okay, thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks,